And we have got Rob from Cypherglass and Shane from SVK Crypto EOS VC fund. Now we have got a block producer and we have got an investor. Now what we are going to talk about today is how do you see where we are heading? What ultimately it's about mass adoption. That's what everybody's goal is when we talk about why EOS, why scaling blockchain, why you just it's a technology which you need. So I will start with Rob and ask him a very basic question of what is the state of mass adoption in his eyes? Where are we heading?
Yeah, I think what the last 5 months of having the EOS mainnet live and in the wild has really proven is that EOS is the platform that can take us to mass adoption. If you're here this morning for my keynote speech that I gave, I was talking sort of about the current state where we have the blockchain operating system. We have the platform that has all the attributes, that has all the capabilities that we need to actually reach mass adoption of dApps. But I think the one key thing that some people are missing is that when they go and they build a dApp, they use terms like somebody mentioned earlier, like staking, and a lot of the interactions are very complex. And in order for a dApp to reach mass adoption, I think it has to be very, very similar to a normal centralized app. Because at the end of the day, most people, my mom, for example, doesn't care if the Facebook she uses is decentralized or not. But she will be more open to using a decentralized Facebook if it's as easy to use as Facebook is today. So.
That's a great perspective, Rob. So I think what we need to look at is Facebook. So I think, first of all, let's welcome Kevin Rose. Thank you for coming in. So we have now got two of the top block producers from US, and let's ask the same question. So Kevin, I think I'm going to ask about the state of mass adoption right now on blockchain. And then I'm going to put, I think before I do that, because we already had a perspective from Rob, I'm going to ask Shane, as an investor, what do you think, when you look at the investments, you must be looking at blockchain, whether there's a real business case here, whether it can really hit the end user. Where do you see today as an investor? Are you seeing those projects? Are you believing in it that you can take this to mass adoption?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you very much. Very kind of you to ask me to be on the panel. Really appreciate everybody coming down. It's been an awesome weekend, and it's really all been about the hackathon. But before I do, I'm very concerned about my two panelists. I thought block producers were making some money. Look at the holes on your jeans. I mean, like, are you not going to go buy yourselves a decent pair of jeans? Hold on. And this man's socks, look at his socks. They are a beautiful pair of socks. Look at that. Huh? In all seriousness, lads, I think that in order to look at mass adoption, I think we really have to look at where we've come and how far we've come. And of course, we all want it to be embedded into our life right now. We all want to be using blockchain. We all want to be right, correct, first mover in a better world in a decentralized fashion. But Jesus, look how feckin' far we've come. Just with the mainnet launch several months ago, we're all here talking. We've all been brought together. It's amazing to see how far things have gone. And I'm not talking about the price. The price is bullshit. Don't fucking worry about the price. That's driven by sentiment. And sentiment is driven by emotion. And emotion is driven by fear and greed. And that's what you've seen in the underlying price. I'm very happy that last year was the year of the ICO. I'm very happy that we've gone past that point. And for any projects that have raised money, fair play to you. I hope you execute on your roadmap. And for the people that don't manage their treasury correctly or that don't execute, then you fucking shouldn't be in this world. You shouldn't be in this business. What I'm really talking about here is, and what excites me, is the underlying tech. And the underlying tech is dislocated from the price action. And it's the underlying tech that brings us all here today. It's the underlying tech that kept people up for 24 hours in a room, not raving, but hacking. And I've got so much respect for those people. I've got so much respect for everybody coming together because we will have mass adoption. It's not a matter of if, it's a when. And things will take time. And at SVK Crypto, I am so patient. All you got to do is stay in the feckin' game. It's all going to work out just perfectly. Rob is going to get a new pair of jeans. I'm going to send you a pair of socks. And we're all going to be cool.
All right, so I think that was an amazing perspective because you talked about the token price, you talked about why we need to believe in it. Why, and I think I really appreciate that one thing you talked about. It's about the progress in EOS world we have made. And people forget, I think we are, the people who like us, who are every day living and breathing EOS, for us it's a long time. But in real world, we have only spent 4 months, 5 months, and that is all we have actually have a mainnet active. So, and look at the apps. I think Rob in the morning talked about the kind of volume some apps are doing, the kind of money is being spent. Let's look at bigger perspective. So we talk about industries. Like, we have, while it's fun to play games, like it's fun to have a lot of actual revenue generated on blockchain, hitting all the records. I would like to ask Kevin, I think, as a BP, because ultimately it's about infrastructure, it's about running a blockchain, running real serious projects which can impact real life of people, which we can touch and feel changing the way we live. Where do you see today where we are? And of course, everybody believes that it's still a long, long marathon. But what do you see? How can EOS bridge that gap, and what you are seeing, Kevin?
What a question. Wow. OK, first of all, definitely thought it was at 5 o'clock. Sorry that I'm late. Secondly, we just bought our beastly bare metal servers. That's why I haven't had the time to up my sock budget. Like 5-year-old socks with holes in them. OK, so a couple things there. Gaming, I think we should talk about that at some point, because there is a lot there in terms of retail adoption and people that are already predisposed to learning the kinds of behaviors surrounding being able to engage with a blockchain. But the coolest thing to me about the EOS software is that you can structure an end user experience in such a way that they don't know that they're working with the EOS IO software. Because trying to shove the complexities of blockchain down the average person's throat is going to be such an uphill battle that rather than doing that, which we should do now because it is our landscape, our real landscape involves engaging with those mechanisms. So we should educate as much as possible. Rob is fantastic with that, with the videos that he does, and SVK with their like media machine they got going. It's amazing. But it's about hiding that. So we get to the point where it's building dApps that people use because they help their lives and make no trade-off in terms of usability, design, speed, efficiency, anything. I think we're going to get there faster than we think, because this is 5 months old. What we saw yesterday with the being able to drop EOS tokens anywhere on a map somewhere around the world with an augmented reality experience, it's just insane. So I think we're going to get there faster than we think. We need to continue to educate based on the mechanisms we have and get to a point where all the dirty blockchain stuff is hidden from the end user and they just receive the value.
Hello. Okay. I think this was a great answer, Kevin, because this is exactly what we see that the problem is, right? When people are right now looking for a blockchain project, people are not looking for what is the end user experience. And that is what I really love, and that's what excites me about EOS technology. Because first time I saw, like, we were used to Bitcoin, we were used to Ethereum. Anybody who has dealt with crypto, you know that you have this public key, private key, and as soon as you start talking to another person who never touched crypto, he says, okay, fine, I'll talk to you later because, oh, it's too complex for me. And first time I saw EOS, it was like, okay, you can set your username just like email, and you can send another person a blockchain-driven transaction using real user account names. I think that was the game changer. And I would like to figure out, like, this is a great tool now developers have. What do you see as the next big impact of that? Like, how do we make blockchain mainstream? And as Kevin said, like, and I think Shane is a good person to answer this question on how do we take it forward where people don't care about blockchain, people care about improvements.
I'll answer the first part of that question and let Rob look after the second part. You mentioned that when you have private keys and public keys and you start to talking to people and they get disengaged, for the people in the room that have gray hair or no hair, I'm in that camp. I remember getting a CD in the post, which had AOL, American Online, and I remember taking out that CD and putting it into the CD tray and closing it on my gateway. I remember seeing it spin around and then generate a 24 key of numbers and letters. I remember waiting for my mom or sister to get off the phone because that's what moms and sisters love to do. They love to talk, especially in Ireland. And once they'd finished up, I got the cable and I'd put it into the wall. And then I would wait for magic to happen with this lovely soundtrack of digits and beeps. And I can still feel that running around in my head. And after that wonderful experience of getting connected several times after your dad picked up the phone and wondering how much this was going to cost him, and you had to tell him it was all cool because you were getting onto the internet, when you finally got on and you launched a browser, you didn't actually know what to look for because it was initially information, right? I mean, before you had that first killer app, which was email, you were just getting on to information. And crypto feels like that to me now. It feels like when you're opening an account with an exchange, everything that you got to go through. Staking tokens, getting bandwidth, doing KYC, going through the ICO process. And look at it now. I pick up this thing. I push one button, and I'm on Google. And I almost get pissed off if it takes more than 2 or 3 seconds. So we'll get over that. And the technology will change. We just got to be patient. I'm going to pass it on to Rob because I think Rob wanted to talk just about future adoption. But all these growing pains, they get resolved, and I'll tell you why. And this is the key to my point. Every financial institution that I've engaged with my prior 15-year hedge fund experience, every large corporation that's either in advisory are based around any type of consultancy business, or any of the tech giants, Google, eBay, Apple, LinkedIn, they're all migrating across. They're all joining our gang. They're all coming along to join our ride for the circus that's moved into town. And when I start to see smarter people, far smarter people than me, coming and knocking on my door going, hey, I need to get in on this, I know that the herd is coming and that we'll have safety in numbers, and all those guys are going to sort out all my problems, so I'm happy as can be.
So before we get a piece from Rob, so Shane, I think great comparison with how internet was. And let me tell you, we did that. Before you came in today, we did a lunch with the airdrop coin on EOS. Yes, it did not go as like we thought that everybody can buy it, but we had 15. So the statistics are we sold 20 lunches where people just use their wallets, their EOS, to actually go and claim a coin.
How much did you sell them for?
That was 3 EOS. That's all.
3 EOS?
Yeah, and the good thing is...
Whoa. Who made the money there? Huh? Who made the money? 3 EOS for that lunch?
This stage we are doing. That's where the money is.
I'll make you lunch, I'll sell it for 2. I would just be out accumulating EOS tokens. And this is the interesting thing. And this, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing coming from an investor. I want to buy and hold crypto, like Bitcoin, EOS. I almost don't want to use it for any particular purpose because I've got a view on the market. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But that's certainly not going to help with overall adoption, maybe. So maybe I got to recalculate.
No, I agree. So it was not EOS, by the way. So we did a conference coin, which was so it was more about technology. So what we were trying to demonstrate is all it takes is a click of a button, and how scalable you can build a business. Like we talk about Bitcoin Cash, and like what should be a cryptocurrency? EOS is not a currency. I agree with you. EOS is a platform, and that's actually we talked about this earlier in the day. And what we wanted to show is about technology really changing the way we work, how we operate. And I'm glad that we talked about the internet comparison. And I keep giving this answer. Like a lot of people ask me, why EOS has become like a gambling blockchain, or has it become like, why is it so limited right now? So, and I think Rob, maybe you can answer about this. And I think while it's great, I keep giving examples of internet started with gambling. Internet was popular for that. People used to ask the same question in 90s. I think like, is internet is only for online gambling? And porn. Let me not talk about that.
Yeah, I think the main reason why we're seeing so many gambling dApps built on top of EOS is because it's the only platform that can really support that kind of dApp. Now, if you look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, in the early days, they had casinos too. I remember playing Texas Hold'em against people in a tournament, and of course, the Bitcoin deposit was very centralized. I had to deposit the coin, wait 30 minutes for my confirmations, and then I could play the game. But now with games that are building on top of EOS, like EOS Bet and BetDice and so many more of them, we're finally seeing a platform that can actually do bets in real time. So there's no deposit going on. You're just going on. You're making a bet, and in a fraction of a second, you're also getting the result of the bet at the same time. But in addition to that, because EOS doesn't have fees, you can actually bet very, very small amounts of money that enables things like penny slots or the ability to just bet a quarter on a single bet. But if I want to bet a quarter on Ethereum and I have to pay a 50-cent transaction fee, suddenly it doesn't make sense because my fee is 2 times the size of my bet. So I think that's why we're seeing so many of those gambling dApps there. But rest assured, it will not just be gambling dApps. There are going to be so many dApps from so many different industries, and there already are, that are being built on EOS today.
So that's a great reason. I think gaming is it brings engagement. It brings a lot of people into the system because nowadays we are talking about gamifying everything, and bringing that play element is always good to bring some kind of a, like it's a best demo for technology. So let me now switch gears and let's talk about future. We had great dApps. We had talked about right from ride sharing to messaging to data and whatnot. We had some amazing projects going on EOS. We can disrupt everything almost. Now the question is, how do you see it happening? Like as a block producer, how is this going to play out? What do we see? Like when we say that, let's say we have really killer dApp, which can go and hit millions of people. Is EOS mainnet sufficient for that, or we need sister chains, side chains? There's a lot of technology debate here, which people don't understand. I think people are like complaining about it. Oh, my CPU is blocked. I can't operate. I can't roll my dice. Like my CPU is not there right now. Why should I pay? Like, yesterday I was able to. Today I'm not. People are like confused about it. How do we solve this problem to keep the engagement going while we are building dApps?
Yeah, I think right now one of the interesting things we're seeing is sort of the evolution of the EOS network as a whole in real time. And it's evolving because of the dApps that are building on top of it. And because these dApps need so much throughput, they have so many users that are using it and rolling the dice tens of thousands of times, some of these users, the chain needs to scale further. And EOS New York has been behind one of the proposals where they actually increased the CPU congestion threshold from, I believe, 20% to 30%. That brought us some more CPU capacity on the chain. But in the long term, in order to support something like a decentralized Facebook or decentralized Twitter or Uber with millions of users, we need more software solutions. And these things are coming. They're in the works at Block.one. A few of these are, number one, sidechains, which is a term we hear a lot. Sidechains, ideally, when they're fully rolled out by Block.one through inter-blockchain communication, will enable a bunch of little chains that are maybe running an individual dApp or experimenting with governance in their own way, will all be able to connect back to the EOS mainnet and be interoperable, which means from a user experience perspective, it should just feel like you're using one giant chain. But in addition to that, we should see some other stuff like multi-threading. We have some good software improvements coming there that should really increase the capacity of the chain by an order of magnitude to keep up with the dApps.
Kevin, do you want to add to that on what your view is? Because ultimately, it's a block producers who have the best eyes on the network in terms of the performance, in terms of what is the best way to take it forward. And you have come out previously, talked about various ways we can solve it, but I would like to know your views on, are we already thinking about it, or do we think it's too far ahead for us right now to worry about those issues of millions of users?
Well, there are first of all, actually, so some representatives from Block.one actually had publicly stated to a group of block producers and a big channel in which communication goes through that it's likely that members of the community or pretty much anyone that's developing on EOS.io would hit an IBC solution first. So I'm not sure Block.one's even prioritizing it anymore. There's like a block producer, CodeChain, wrote a paper in Chinese on IBC protocol that I spent a couple hours to translate and understand, which I did not, but don't worry, I don't run our servers. But yeah, it's absolutely what Rob said, because it's going to be the decentralize everything phrase that Block.one says over and over is for EOS.io and not just EOS. But it is important that EOS scale to the point so that it can position itself as the central core of this hub that is comprised of many chains to be able to, spread out the cost of resources, or pretty much exactly the things that you were saying. I agree with what you're saying. But we need to scale very fast. I mean, this is you need to be monitoring it 24/7, and sometimes right now it's happening so fast that we're reacting. And like what Rob was saying with the increasing the CPU use threshold until the chain restricts into a congestion state, right? That was something that we learned to figure out and tested, and they're like, okay, but while that was happening, CPU was too expensive for the average user to do anything, so we were reacting. We definitely need to start being proactive on some of these things, and a lot of that has to do with the talent starting to disperse. It's very concentrated in Block.one right now. And object computing. These are the biggest, foremost experts on the software. They wrote it. So that talent needs to go out, the knowledge needs to go out, and then be proactive in the way that we scale.
That is a great point, and I think you touched upon two important things which I would like to highlight and rephrase. I think one thing which you talked about is the IBC, that there's a lot of work going on in the community. You talked about block producers. Let me tell you one thing. I took part in the EOS hackathon last couple of days. On my table, one of the developers talked about when the idea was launched, he said, why don't we do IBC? That's the kind of enthusiasm we have where somebody wants to build an IBC protocol in a hackathon in 24 hours. But yeah, I agree. I think that was ambitious while we talked about it, and we dropped that idea, thankfully. But I would say that I'm glad that you touched upon this point, that the community-based development, which is happening in EOS, I think this is the true point of decentralization, where we are developing and continuously updating the chain. I've not seen any other blockchain which can update without stopping it, without forking it. You can do live software upgrades. It feels like modern world now. Like it feels like your phone, where you can do you are sleeping and your iOS gets updated, your Android gets updated, and that's what is happening with EOS. We are having the OS getting updated live, and it's an amazing job the block producers are doing and the community is doing. And this is where I think which gives us hope that this is going to automatically resolve, because there is great community working on it. We have great developers. But I think people are impatient, and people are looking at, okay, how can I make sure? So my question was, how do we make sure we don't disengage people who are right now in the community, who are users, they don't understand technicalities?
Just to come back on your point there, when you look at where we've come, in particularly with EOS and Block.one, they incorporated their company not too many months before starting their token generation event. The token generation event, which they executed, was the largest in history, 360 days, I believe, starting every 23 hours to give each time zone around the world an opportunity to purchase the tokens within the 23-hour period. They executed that without any issues from regulatory, IRS, compliance, and legal. They raised in excess of, depending on what maths you use, $4.6, $4.8 billion. They did that without Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, or any other bullshit investment bank out there. Just doing that one particular token generation event challenges equity capital markets to the point of inception. So the mastermind behind that execution and the small team that did that at Block.one, you have to take your hands off to it. They did an unbelievable job of that. And after the largest token generation event in history, to get the mainnet launched was also, along with the block producers, which launched the network, was an amazing, amazing, amazing job. We've now looked and start to comp the overall protocol against the likes of Neo, our Bitcoin, our Ethereum. And at these early days, we're miles ahead. We're not there yet to what we're going to need it to do. But I think from the point of having the largest token generator event, to having mainnet launched, to then allocating $1 billion of that capital, or I think as Brian Mailer said yesterday, something in the region of about $600 million, to structure the VC component. And by the way, we have weekly calls with the VC partners and with Block.one. They are extremely diligent on custodying the capital correctly and supporting the right types of projects. And also putting the team in place to organize these wonderful hackathons, and also now starting to build out Block.one, which have gone from, I think, something in the region of initially 30, 40 employees. I think they've been ramping that up now into the hundreds. To do that at the time frame and to build a business like they have in that short period of time, it's an amazing feat. And if you can look at how they've executed in the past and push that out 5 or 10 years with how they look to deploy it and what they're working on in Blacksburg, Virginia, and maybe some of you got an inclination from Dan Larimer. He's also very happy to show people and talk to people what he's doing. It's quite amazing. So I think from our perspective, we have faith, not only in the community, but in the block producers, in the allocation of capital, and also the projects that are coming up. And certainly from a project side of stuff, we look at projects every day. I probably have over 100 projects every week in our inbox. There still needs to be a maturity. There still needs to be better understanding, well thought out, projects that have better incentives, projects with teams that can execute correctly, but that will all come. And I think that we just have to have a long-term view, but work hard every day in what we're trying to execute and just get rid of the noise. So that was my view, and that's kind of my summary on how we attack it on the day-to-day.
No, Shane, I think that's a great point. I think we keep forgetting. We talked about mainnet launch, and you touched upon a very important point. That whole organization, the conception of like this whole EOS was not long time back.
And actually, there's one last point. They manage their treasury to the point of any professional investment bank. Remember, it was an ERC20 token. The money was coming in ETH. Every other project that I saw last year that raised money in ETH decided to be a great idea to buy more ETH. Yeah. Right? There was one project that I looked at that raised $30 million. They decided to take $10 million of it and invest in other ICOs. That wasn't on their roadmap. They didn't tell anyone. And guess what? They lost it all. Because when you look at the ICO market at the start of the year, 42% of 902 ICOs were below issue. That's now 95% of those 902 ICOs, and it's tracking to 99.9. What Block.one did with managing their treasury correctly and actually selling out it each and every time and putting it into fiat, I believe it was only a week or two after the mainnet launch was where they had sold out of any type of ETH, and I think their average price was, or at that level, was kind of 455, and I think they'd got out higher. This is not proprietary information. I don't know anything I don't know. It's just from talking to the community. So they executed their treasury management extremely well, and that just shows how professional of a team they are.
No, I think, again, those are very critical points. So what we look at when we look at a project, when we look at the teams, while we talked about community and the great work community is doing, I think ultimately Block.one is providing the software. So I keep comparing, like when I talk to people, I keep comparing again. I go back to mobile because that's where I have experience in, like a mobile industry. When Google releases Android, people believe in Google because Google had that strength and that corporate level, kind of faith. And Block.one is operating right now the way it is. It gives us a lot of confidence because they have been very, very open about what they are doing. They have been very organized, the way hackathons, like all of us experience the hackathons and a great experience which they are providing. And in terms of software, I think what we are trying to understand now is ultimately it's a community-driven chain. It's an open source project.
Can I stop you right there for a second?
Sure.
Because I think it's important. I think it's important that we also take a step back. I mean, we would not be here if not for the genius strategic moves of Block.one and their ability to develop the EOS-IO software in general. But we can't continue to solely rely on a single point, just in general. And one thing I think is key is making EOS more accessible to developers to actually build the things that are going to change the world. Because if you look at just the meetups around the world, 60,000 people on the Meetup app for EOS and like 1.15 million for Ethereum. So people just don't know about EOS yet. The developers, the tooling isn't there yet, and that's one of the things that I think as block producers we should concentrate on, is to build these free tools for people so that they can, because no one else is going to do it otherwise. You can't monetize them, right? But we're perfectly positioned and incentivized to build those free tools and give them away for free. But it's going after the builders and giving them the tools to do it. Just get them in the room with EOS. That's it.
So Kevin, I think this is one of the greatest thing which we have been discussing, and that's why I think one of the things we talked about during when we started the lightning session on the dApps, and I did talk about developers, and I think I'm really love it when the block producers are so passionate about enabling developers, and I think what we are seeing right now is early days, and again I go back to this 4 or 5 months. If you are a developer, I think if you have ever developed software, and if you have the history, if you are like me, I have like at least 17 years of history behind me. I have seen the birth of smartphones and how it has evolved. I would say that this is amazing, the level of tools which are already available on EOS. Yesterday, I was seeing some pictures of an IDE, which is like developer can start developing on EOS without worrying about the hookups in the blockchain. And when I was like, if you go back and compare, I keep comparing with big corporates because that shows us how it usually works. Even when the company like Google invests in Android, it took them to get like 2 or 3 years to get to that level of tools. And what we have as EOS community is like 5 months. We are ready.
I just remembered the point I wanted to make that I completely forgot while I was talking. When Google released Android, they dumped a couple $1 million and said, "Here, go to train people. Train people to code in this, train people to develop on this, go, just do it, all right?" And one of the things, we cannot rely on Block.one to educate every developer and build every tool and do a hackathon of this size all the time, forever. And it's why it's kind of unfortunate that we do have this mechanism built into the EOS mainnet, the Worker Proposal Fund. And I'm not saying I'm a proponent for or against, but we would be able to finance something of that scale ourselves without relying on anyone. If we were able to say, I'm going to take $2 million and I'm going, we can work together to figure out how this is managed, but distribute that so there are regional developer trainings all over the world, and do that for a couple years. We need to be off like a rocket ship. We cannot, and the sad thing is that we're a little bit victim of fear of this idea of a worker proposal fund in general just being pilfered. If anyone is unfamiliar, it's 4% of total tokens issued per year accumulates into an account that we could find a way to make a collective decision about what to do with it. No such mechanism exists. We need to build one. Should we even have one? The community is debating it. But arguably, objectively good idea to do with that money would be to spend it on teaching people how to build things with this software.
Amazing answer, Kevin. I think, and let me tell you guys, this is a good plug for me because we are trying to do this in Silicon Valley. We are in San Francisco. We are at the hub of Silicon Valley, where Google was born, where Facebook was born, and all the Apple was born. So we are at a place in the area which is known for it. And what we need is this developer communities. This is exactly what we're talking about, and we are going to build it. I see the passion here. Like, I'm passionate about it. We are doing it in Silicon Valley. This is why this conference is there. And I think what I would like to ask this from Shane.
Hold on. Let me just finish up on Kevin. I totally agree with you, Kevin. You're absolutely right. Let's take a step back as well. We also have other infrastructure being built out and other blockchains coming on. We have Dfinity, which looks really, really interesting. We also have Hashgraph, and we also have another really interesting blockchain called Kadena, which is also looking really, really interesting. We need to find these tools to be built out. I agree with you. You cannot waste another second. I think on the back of what's happened with regards to the overall markets and the token generation event, we have some goodwill in the market. But you're right, when you look at the developer community, and it's a number that I'm very familiar with, when you combine Ethereum versus EOS, you need to have that built out. And also, you need to have enterprises using this platform. When you have enterprises using this platform, or when you can go to an enterprise, whether it be an Accenture or Deloitte or Ernst & Young, and they can see the tools that their clients would need. Once you start to see enterprises come on to use this, you've already seen a lot of talk around IBM and their blockchain component. That's when it becomes mass adopted, and that's when we're certainly on the way with where we need to go. But I agree, action needs to happen now.
I think, wow, we covered, I think, 2 aspects, which I'm really getting excited about now. So we talked about community, we talked about, so this is a great view, right? Means we have an investor who is part of the EOS VC fund, who is telling us that what is future looking like based on big enterprise apps which can run on EOS. We have a block producer who is talking about how communities can fund developers, and we can have a grassroots-based apps coming out of the community. I think this is a true sense. I think we are talking about, there are so many ways this can scale. There's so many ways we can really get to mass adoption. And I'm really glad that we have this amazing diverse views even on this panel, and that's what the height of decentralization. We have somebody who's so close to Block.one because you're working on the VC fund. We have community, which is which is like saying, okay, we don't care. We have a great community here. Block.one is great. Now, what can we do to enhance it? I don't find it in any other blockchain. I don't see this as where community is so passionate about it, where nodes, how many times, okay, let's compare it. We have Bitcoin and Ethereum, some mining guys running and mining Ethereum. Like block producer in true sense, if you compare, of course, we had a great talk from Rob about how to be a block producer, roles of block producer, and EOS is very different. People don't understand it. Crypto is like when somebody comes as an outsider, they say, oh, you are just miners. So this is the community. It's an open source community. This is not a crypto. This is not something a set of nodes are mining. They are building an ecosystem. They are building the future. And this is what, give a big hand, guys. Like, this is something which we need to talk about, how blockchain can scale. This is what it's all about. So now I think in the interest of time, now I'm going to ask last question to everybody. And you can take your time, but what I would like to understand is, in your eyes, what industry is going to be, you make speculations. We don't care, of course. We all have our own wish list. Using EOS, what do you want to see next as the biggest project? And what area? So maybe, Rob, you can start with it.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the industries that are the easiest to disrupt. And what I mean by that is generally software products. So if you look at Facebook, you look at Twitter, you look at Uber, a lot of these companies are basically just putting an intermediary into an existing business model. So with taxis, with Uber, they became the intermediary to match people to cars. And with blockchains, with a peer-to-peer system, we can sort of take the intermediary out and disrupt their business model. And I think we're going to see a lot of that, whether it's Eva, who presented earlier today, building that decentralized Uber, or if it's Block.one, if they eventually come out with a decentralized social media network. I think those software companies that are just rent seekers, basically, are the ones that are going to get disrupted first.
Gaming. $130 billion industry. Who here has ever played a video game or is a current gamer? I mean, I raised my hand because I wanted to, but actually I don't have time to play games anymore, which sucks, or sleep or do anything, or buy socks. So gaming is a $130 billion industry, and if you've played a game, you grind away in an RPG or a shooter. If you play Destiny, I used to play Destiny, and you go for those exotic guns. If you are able to capture that as a non-fungible token, if you are able to transfer that out of the game over to an exchange in which someone is willing to pay for that because they're lazy and don't want to grind for it, but whatever, you own that item in the game, it could disrupt that entire medium. And I have this pipe dream of how it could work, which is the AAA developer is no longer building a finished game product that is shipped, but rather they're building a general framework for a story, rules of physics, the lore, the items, the characters, and saying to the very popular modding community, you can build episodes, you can build little epics of time within this framework that we've built, and you monetize it. So now we live far beyond just the $59.99 Red Dead Redemption 2, which I hope I get to play one day kind of thing, and allow people to live in an entire universe. And then with things like virtual reality being a part of that, I mean, it gets absolutely insane. But what we would, that's I think, the most likely thing to be disrupted first. And then what's going to come last, have EOS.io as the basis for an entire government's national security, or national currency and infrastructure.
For me, I'm not really that interested in what's first. First for what? I'm interested in better. I'm interested in clearer. I'm interested in transparent. I'm interested in dismediation. I'm interested in having a world, a platform where people are remunerated. And I think there was a lot of talk about the incentive layer. I'm interested in people having control over their data. I'm interested about fractional ownership, land registry rights being properly recorded. I'm interested about people having their information from a medical standpoint when they go into a hospital and it's all there on blockchain. I'm interested in the ability for people to be rewarded correctly, whether it be any type of program or air miles or any type of membership. That's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in a better future. I'm interested in a transparent future. I'm interested in a future whereby the individual gets remunerated correctly for what they have or what they give, depending upon how engaged that they are. And I'm interested in books and records being recorded correctly so everybody knows who had what. And that's, for me, the vision that I have. And that's, for me, what's important. So it doesn't matter to be first, you just got to be best.
No, that can only come from somebody who is seeing so many pitches that he knows exactly where you're going, guys. So I think the reason for asking the question was you need to get ideas. Now, how many ideas we got right here in last 3 minutes? Now you know what you're building. So go out, build. That's what scaling blockchain is about. That's what EOS is about. It's about developers. It's about what you can disrupt. You heard it from the people who are living, breathing it every day. You saw what we saw on this stage earlier today, and thanks to our panelist, Shane, for coming down, spending time even after the hackathon. Everybody's tired. Rob, I think he has been here for 3 days now. It's a very, very tiring weekend, and same for Kevin. I think thanks again, guys, for coming down, and it was a great discussion, and I hope that this gives a lot of encouragement to developers here. And I'm really hopeful that we see, when we meet here, maybe 6 months or 1 year from now, we should see that we have totally different scale of apps coming out and presenting, where we have people saying, oh, I used EOS while I came here as a blockchain. And I want to see people who say, I don't know what is EOS, but I was using an app which was built on EOS. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob.